Well, welcome back to the Practice of Love podcast. I am here today, Lair Torrent, licensed marriage and family therapist, with my sweet wife, Ashely, also a therapist. And we are going to be talking about another element of the practice of love today. We're going to talk about the question that I think is burning in most people's pockets, at least when you're off center. Stay on center.
I forgot my pens.
You got to stay in the box.
You got to stay in the box. Brandon wants us to stay in the box. We're going to stay in the box.
I'm a leaner. We're going to talk about the question that I think ends up burning a hole in anyone's pocket who is having a difficult time in their relationship, who has recurrent issues within their relationship. And that is the question, should my relationship be this hard?
Can I say one thing before we go into it?
You can say 1,000 things.
Yes. Well, I think because you give me so much shit about my journey with coffee, I would like to report to all those listening that are interested, and I know there are a few that actually care because they're on this journey themselves, Kelly that Coppola. I actually, what?
Kelly Coppola.
Kelly Coppola. You're calling her out. Hi, Kelly. We love you. I'm speaking to Kelly directly. And to any women, this doesn't seem to happen to men, that their nervous system can't handle coffee. I haven't heard this. I hear it more from women. But I will say the good news is he drinks his coffee, is he drinks his 10 cups a day. That I have done enough work in my nervous system that I can actually drink coffee without feeling crazy. This is amazing. This is amazing. And I just want to report that this is possible. Healing is possible. It is
possible.
I love coffee so much, and now I can enjoy it. And now you can't.
But look, I get my coffee talk partner back. You know what I mean? So I'm making fun only because I love to pick on you and I love to needle and make you laugh. But yeah, I got my coffee talk partner back. She's finally back to the bean.
In the morning only.
Listen, that's fine. But this sort of, just this blanket policy, coffee out, right?
There's no compassion in that statement of the journey that I've been on. There really isn't. Look at you sighing. There's no acknowledgement or compassion on that. What I love is that you joke with me as if I just wanted to play around and give up coffee. You saw what I went through. True. You saw the fits that I had when I went just no coffee. One day I lost my mind.
Right. And we laughed with Kelly about that idea. She said she drank that mushroom coffee or whatever the hell that was. And immediately she would that a cup of coffee. I was like, that's me. I would have bought that shit. I would have tried it. And look, that's the good try. That's, I wanted to as well, find another alternative. But listen, this is what I drink coffee. And
yeah. So and that's good because your nervous system isn't fried like mine. So I just wanted to report.
That for sure. We don't know that for sure.
Well, you handle it differently.
I do.
Yeah. So that's my report on the coffee journey. Well, thank you, Mud Coffee, New York City. I'm so grateful for your dark cherry blend. It's so good.
So good. Yeah. We used to haunt that place when we lived in New York City a couple of times a day. And now we have it shipped here because we're just that bougie.
Right.
Because I don't like the coffee down here. But anyway, so we digress. Should we get back on topic?
Yes. So should relationships be this hard is the question that's you feel is top of the mind question for you today. And I'm just curious, what brought you to this question? I know you've talked about it a lot. We've talked about it a lot, but
primarily because I get asked this question ultimately a lot. It almost becomes like this little secret question, and it'll come out often. And when I'll split the couple and do individual sessions, and we'll be talking about it when we get in. Finally, it's one of them or both at some point. We might say, I just have one question, and I already know what it is. What's that? Should it be this hard? Should it really be this hard? And it's sort of laced with, and I want to hear what you think about that question. But for me, it's laced with are we meant to be? are our problems, the things that we struggle with? Does this mean we shouldn't be together? What do you
Yeah.
think about that?
No, I think you're right. I feel like it's kind of ask with the please tell me the answer that helps me make a decision
Mm-hmm.
or makes a decision for me. Um, yeah, you know, I think people, anyway, I think you're right. I think it is laced with all those
Mm-hmm.
other questions behind it.
Like what?
Like you said, like, should we be together? Are we meant to be? You know,
Mm-hmm.
should relationships be this hard? I think there's some part of them that's asking for you to give them the answer to whether they should be with this person or not.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Or
and
are
I
these
think it comes,
signs? Mm-hmm.
what'd you say?
Are this these must be signs that
Yeah.
we're not meant to be together?
Yeah.
And so my contention is that the difficulties that you're experiencing, that doesn't, if you're experiencing difficulties, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are not supposed to be together.
Right.
Right. Because my sort of rote answer to that question of should our relationships be this hard, I say yes, absolutely, but not for the reasons you're currently experiencing.
Mm. Well, it
And
reminds me of when people say, like when I talk about mindfulness and people say mindfulness is so hard. And I'm like, no, overthinking is so hard and the
so much
feelings that
harder.
overthinking creates. And I'm like, should relationships be this hard? Not they're hard, but again, if you're behaving in certain ways or not taking responsibility or
Mm-hmm.
and you're not working on your relationship in a mindful way, then yeah, it's going to feel freaking hard. But if you're working on it in a mindful way and in a way that we're going to talk about, it's hard only at first, I think. I mean, it does get hard when you have difficult conversations. It's never comfortable, but I feel like ultimately it gets easier when you're doing it in a healthy way.
And this is what I often tell my couples. I'll say, if you just try this thing, and I'm pointing to the book here, right? If you just try these 5 practices, it's just easier, right? Ultimately, it becomes easier. But before then, people find themselves mired in, and I did a quick Google search, like what are the top 10, top 15 reasons people go to people like you and I for help with their relationships. And so when people are mindless, when people are experiencing their relationship in a way that makes them ask that question, should it be this hard, sort of exasperated in the ask, they're experiencing communication problems. They're experiencing issues around sex. They can't talk about money. There's jealousy or trust issues. There's often division of labor problems, family of origin problems. Maybe their differences in their values become a problem. There's not much of a spark left often, or someone's withholding love and affection.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And these are the things that people get stuck in. This is where they can't find any traction, and they keep rehashing old arguments over and over and over again, to the point where they will ask me this question: should it be this hard? And I'll say yes, but not for these reasons. And people
Yeah.
are often puzzled. Well, then what reason should I be struggling with?
Mm. And I just want to say that I'm a little distracted because speaking of being in relationship, our children who are homeschooled, I told them that I was recording a podcast with you, and they've decided to, or one of them has decided to practice their instrument. And
Which
after telling
which
me how
which is
quiet
not
they
a
were,
which is not a which is not a clarinet, by the way.
which is what, not a
Not a
clarinet. No,
clarinet. It's
it
not a
seems to be the
bassoon.
drummer is downstairs drumming. And I'm like, I literally just said, could y'all please just be quiet? And they said, oh, we'll be so quiet. And then I'm
Yeah.
just noticing their drum sounds. So I feel a little distracted from what you're saying, and I'm so sorry. But
You mean I personally feel as though this face and everything that comes out of here should be so captivating that you. How is it that you're distracted from this? Tell me that.
it's really hard. Like
Should it
it's
be
really
that
hard.
hard? Should it be that hard for you? Apparently it is.
But I'm trying to go back to what you're saying. I think when people ask this question, they're usually at the end of their rope. They're at a pivotal moment, I feel like, where their life is asking for them, their relationship is asking for them to do something different. And this is a pivotal moment where they can decide to do something different or they can pack it in. Now, I'm obviously not talking about certain type of relationships where they're not supposed to be together. They're not healthy. But I
That's right.
think this This is an important question that people come to.
Right. And so this is when they will come at me with one or more of these issues that I just outlined.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say, so these are the things you're fighting about. And they'll like, yeah, yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, almost as if I'm daft. Like, why would I point that out? It seems obvious. And I'll say, so now I want to know what you're fighting for.
Mm-hmm. Which I love this question. I think it's such a good question.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what we're fighting for is everything that lives beneath the surface on this. And I've cited this quote many times, but it was Sue Johnson who said in her book "Hold Me Tight." She said, clinicians and the clients that they serve are usually only willing to go to the waterline on so much, and
Mm-hmm.
so many clients or so many therapists, especially new ones who aren't quite seasoned yet, will get caught up and try to solve these problems.
Mm-hmm.
So we have communication problems. We should solve that problem. We have, problems with the sex. We should solve that problem. And we can get drawn into all of those because look, there's some traction in that. There's some things that you can do to help uh, salve some of the suffering that goes on. But you're really only salving that surface. You're not treating the act. You're treating the symptom. All of these things, the money, the sex, the kids, the division of labor problems, family of origin problems, whatever that is, and I know this may be controversial, those are just symptomatic issues of something else. And
Right.
it's the reason that relationships should be hard.
Mm-hmm.
Which
It's
is
the reason relationships should be hard because you're getting caught up in those details, or the relationship should be that
no.
hard because it's important to stop getting lost in those details and to be mindful of what's actually going on.
So I don't want to confuse. No, these are the reasons that relationships are often seem hard,
Right.
right? Because they're caught up in these things. Relationships should be hard because they ask more of us.
Right.
Right. And if we're actually looking below that waterline that Sue Johnson talked about, what we're going to get to is something far deeper than money issues or even sex
Mm-hmm.
issues or withholding love or any of the issues that are on that top 15 list. Right. We're going to get to things like, well, the core four questions that I like to ask. Was I loved? Was I safe? Was I enough? And do I matter?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And now we're asking them again in this arena, in this new relationship. And what we
Mm-hmm.
find is relationships are actually hard because our core issues have come to the surface in our relationship to be healed.
Yes. And
What do you
can
think about
we?
that mic drop right there?
it's it's so true. It's amazing, and I'm so sorry. I didn't have the. I'm so
Do you want to start?
often. I'm so bad because we've discussed this so many times. But when you brought this to me and when you helped, like when you talked about it and you helped me see this, it was like it was the thing that made such a difference in our relationship. When
Mm-hmm.
I personally took responsibility that I'm constantly asking the question, "Am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe?"
Mm-hmm.
It helped me in the way I interacted with you. And I think when you understood that I'm constantly
Oh my
asking, "Am
God.
I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe?" It helped you in the way you spoke to me, you interacted
Mm-hmm.
with me.
Mm-hmm.
It changed everything, and it's such a beautiful way of being in relationship. There's so much curiosity when you come at like, okay, what is beneath the surface? What is actually going on here? And I'm not saying tolerating someone's bad behavior. I mean, one of the best things you ever did for me was, I mean, for our relationship and ask of me was to be better.
Mm-hmm.
You required me to speak to you in a more compassionate, kinder way, especially when I would drink too much tequila. Um, you required me to talk about things in a different way. That was the culture of our relationship. And when I say
Mm-hmm.
require, I mean, you asked that. You
Yeah.
were like, if we're going to be in relationship, this is what would feel good. And the way you're talking to me doesn't feel good.
It changed the game. It changed the game for me as your partner and being partnered with it. It was changed the game for me because it was really hard to find compassion. And I think this is true
Mm-hmm.
for everybody. It's really hard to find compassion when you're looking at the adult who's fighting you, who
Mm-hmm.
is saying things or being curt or remote or angry with you. It's hard to find compassion for that protector part. It's really easy to find compassion for the little girl in you that doesn't feel safe in the world.
Mm-hmm.
That was easy for me.
Mm-hmm.
But this is why relationships should be hard because we have to figure that out and surmount that. We have to
Mm-hmm.
surmount the ego's need to win the fight in that moment and look
Mm-hmm.
beyond the protective aspect of self that has shown up in that fight and go, hi, little girl standing behind this part. I see you there and I know what's actually going on.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah,
Well, we have to
that
be
was,
willing to be curious.
that's right.
We have
Mm-hmm.
to be willing to be curious as to, okay, what could possibly be happening here?
Mm-hmm.
And that takes you take a beat, you take a moment, there's something powerful that happens when you just don't assume someone wants to be an asshole and they're being an asshole, that you actually like imagine like there's pain under there, and you get curious and you have a conversation about it. And it also is beautiful when the person who's acting like that can say, I'm really scared, or I don't feel safe, or
Mm-hmm.
um, can recognize where they've been coming from in the part of the relationship, like what part they've been showing up in. And I recognized I was showing up as a girl that didn't feel safe, who grew up in a chaotic, abusive home. And I kept showing up to our discussions in that place
Mm-hmm.
until like we had conversations about it.
Right. Well, when you don't feel safe in the world, you grow an aspect of self that can make you feel safer.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I really feel that when you reach this place of compassion and understanding, when you recognize, when you and your partner are able to have these kinds of conversations with curiosity and compassion, and you see both people taking responsibility, and you see the willingness to understand, it just changes everything. It softens everything,
Yes.
because the way we act when we're coming from those pain points, that's not really who we are.
Mm-mm.
You hear like, some people act out of neediness, some people act out of fear, some people act out of, distrust. People act out of
Jealousy. Yeah.
jealousy,
Mm-hmm.
whatever they're triggered in, they're acting through that, but that's not really who that person is most of the time.
Mm-mm. No, and you taught me that. Like that's one of the things that you really championed in our relationship was that idea of let's be curious. That's something that I
Mm-hmm.
always kind of get hung up on. Um, because when I devolve down into those parts of me that want to protect the kids in me, those wounded aspects in me, everyone becomes quite myopic. We see the world through that lens, through that aspect. And so everyone and everything in your sphere is someone or something to protect yourself against.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been hard for me to wake up in those moments and go, well, maybe I should ask more questions. And you're
Right.
constantly encouraging me to do that. And that is an incredibly mindful act to stop, to push pause, to take that breath, to regulate your nervous system, to recognize the part of you that's come to the table and kind of go, okay, well, what would happen if I asked more questions, if I got curious?
Well,
And that
your
always tends to
defense
de-escalate.
yeah, and your defense mechanism, you get lit up pretty quickly. You're fiery, and you get guarded. And I often err, just I think it's part of my Libra rising. I think it's just part of my makeup. Sometimes I over empathize or have too much compassion in the other way for people. I'm not saying I necessarily do this in our relationships, like I have compassion for you, but I think that go-to for me is like I want to make sure I understand both sides. Again, sometimes I can err in the wrong direction. Has led me to curiosity, and I noticed also that curiosity, when you ask a question and you get curious, it de-escalates the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you
Right.
just go in hot, assuming someone is just like something, then they're defended, and then you're just both defended and you're going at. But if you come in just like, so it feels like you're scared right now, or you're angry.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me more about this? Help me understand. When you come at curiosity, then you have a different kind of conversation. Why are you laughing?
Well, because I know that like sometimes my first reaction to that has been like, I don't want to talk about that right now. I want to be, blah, blah. I want to be mad. And, but you do that and it does de-escalate. It does kind of like, wait, we're not doing the thing where we,
Mhm.
get all fired up so it does have the effect of de-escalating, even the most combative parts of me, the parts of me that can spoil for a little bit of a fight. I hate to admit that that part of me still exists, but it does. Um, but it always sort of, we find the trailhead to the road of repair when you do that. And I have to say that that's a skill set that I need to, um, be more ready to offer it to you as well. I think you're far better at it than I am, if I'm honest.
Well, like I said, I think it's that natural part of me that can over empathize, or like that over empathize in someone else's direction is sometimes like overriding my own feelings. I have to keep an eye on that. So I think curiosity is just a natural way I show up. It just feels like, and I love the de-escalation piece when the other person's willing. It's really helpful.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, do you find that you have to circle back and then talk about feelings that you've actually had? Did you ever override feelings? Do you ever do that with us?
I think there's, I think there's been time. I don't think anymore. I think there have been times in the past where, I was taught try to understand the other person to keep yourself safe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I recognized like curiosity is important, but it's also important not to override my own feelings. So there is a moment, I think when you grow up being gaslit your whole life, there's a moment of noticing the initial feeling, being mindful of how you want to approach the conversation and being present for what's happening, but also just trying to honor your experience and not losing that experience.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. Like, I
It
think your
does.
process is different from mine. You go to, I'm angry. This is what happened. You go to fiery, and
Mm-hmm.
I go to like curiosity, but also like trying to be compassionate and curious, and then um, listening to how you feel and honor my own feelings. And I just have to make sure I hold on to my experience and honor it and be
Mm-hmm.
true to it. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think I'm making much sense.
No, I think you are. I think you are.
Okay.
And I'm just so I want to kind of come back to the topic of so this is part and parcel of why relationships should be hard because in that moment when things are going sideways or we're having a difficult conversation or we don't necessarily struggle with the things that are on this list. Um, this is why your relationship should be hard because relationships ask more of us, and so we've hit on it asks us to be more mindful in moments where we want to be anything but mindful. We want to be
Right.
reactionary. I say want, I use that in air quotes. Um, but we become reactionary. And relationships ask us to, rather than show up in a knee jerk response in a part of self that is protective, to ask the question, and this is hard in the moment, to take a breath and say, who do I want to be? What part of me shows up here?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that's the first part of it. Those are the first two pieces that I think we've kind of covered it. But do you want to say anything else about mindfulness and how parts are actually a big reason why relationships should actually be hard? Because this is hard.
I I just think I can't drive home to enough people how powerful mindfulness is, and that at first tracking what you're thinking and what you're feeling, tracking what's happening in your nervous system, it's so important. And the the mind will say don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
The mind will
Yeah,
say, oh, I'll never
I would
get this, it's
I
a
would say
waste of time.
a part of you would I would say a part.
Yeah, a part of you. And I think a self-sabotaging part. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of times what happens in relationship, there's a part that knows the groove of suffering, that knows how things are going to go, that
Ooh, that's good.
um, is so used to like this knee-jerk response and kind of gets off on it sometimes. I think
Ooh.
I think some people get off on that like chaos and drama and the thing.
Well, it's
And
what
so
you've known.
it's what you've known, right?
Right.
So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't really feel like taking a breath and pausing. It just feels like too much work. So I'm just going to dive headfirst
No,
into a shit pond.
I'm gonna be shit. Shit. All right. So no, I'm going to go further and say that, and I'm going to call myself out on this because we're talking about mindfulness, and the way you
Yes,
explained it
you
was
should call yourself
beautiful.
out. I love when you do.
I did. Listen. This is the forum for it because you can't yell at me. Um, so for me, it's a part. There's a part of me, right? Because I'm very mindful and aware of like who shows up on the border. I always say, if we're going to talk about couples communication, let's draw a Venn diagram, two circles intersecting, and that shared area is the most important real estate in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That shared area, that little almond between you and your partner, that is some prime ground. Now you need to know who and you shows up.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you show up at a part of you that is combative, a protective part, or an inner critic, or a younger part, that conversation's not going to go well through those parts. And that's where I always say you can use whatever conversation device you want. What I think I heard you say is going to turn into, what the fuck did you just say to me, very, very quickly, if you're in your
Right.
combative part. And so for me, I can be very mindful and I can kind of know what's going on and I can feel all of it happening. And then there's that part of me that kind of comes up and whispers in my ear, and you know what I'm going to do. He goes, now you get to say some fucked up shit. right?
Right.
And I go, and now I'm mindful enough to go, no, 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 no. You're not going to do that. No, no, you can do it now. You can. You heard what she said. And I'm like, oh, and it's like there's this battle going on. And I always think of like the F for those of you the reference matters. At the end of Harry Potter, the last one, when he's fighting with Voldemort, and you can see Harry's face melting with Voldemort, and Voldemort's face melt. That's what it feels like to me
Mm-hmm.
as I sort of wrestle with these aspects of self. And so you said, I don't think I can underscore enough of how important mindfulness is. I think that's right. I say to my clients, I can't underscore enough how important it is that you recognize that parts are real, compartmentalization of the mind is real. And
Mm-hmm.
once you're in a particular compartment of your mind, those are the skills you have. Those are the abilities you have. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
lens you'll see everything through. And so those first two steps of being mindful of the part of you that shows up, man, is that important. And this is why relationships are hard.
It's so important. I mean, I'll know, um, like not necessarily a situation with us, or I mean, maybe it's a situation with us or a situation, but something will happen and I'll get triggered and I'll watch. Like I can feel my parts shape, like as if my face is shape shifting into younger child, adult self, wisest self, regress self. I will see all the reactions that each part wants to have.
Oh, yeah.
It's so fascinating. Like it's like I'm clicking through a screen of possibilities. And then I feel like mindfulness has helped me decide, okay, which one do I want to land in? And that's what I love about it. It's like, so which part do I want to choose to not play, but to express itself? Which part do I want to live through in this moment? Yeah.
Yeah. So you get to choose. You get to choose how you show up.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And so I'm noticing time. And I'm wondering if this should be a two-part,
Mm.
considering how far we have to go. What do you
Yes.
think
How
of that?
far we got to go. That sounds great. I was actually just remembering the example of when this happened to me the other day is when you pretended to go to pee on the phone with one of my friends.
You're gonna tell
So the other day,
them.
Lair is supposed to call a friend of ours who's a female friend. There's to talk about something. And
About
I'm in
business.
the
It's
other,
about my
what'd you
website.
say?
It's about my
Oh, about
website.
his website. Anyway, the lovely Patsy is helping us both with our websites. And she is such a soul friend and not a
I
new
haven't even
friend
told
to
Patsy
me.
that I did this.
Oh my God. Not a new friend to me, but a new friend to Lair, but they get along really great. Anyway, so Lair has a meeting with her and
Phone meeting.
I see him grab his headset and the phone and I hear him going into the bathroom. And next thing I hear him doing is he's peeing and he's talking on the phone to
Yeah,
Patsy.
because that's what
And
you
I'm
do.
sitting there going,
So no,
the
so
first part of me goes, this isn't
hey,
happening.
hey, Patsy, and then I like gave a break, and I was like, no, no, we're just all hanging, just just having a regular old Sunday or whatever, and I was like, I was really using my old acting chops to actually mimic a phone call. So go ahead.
Well, you just told the end of the story that
I
you were
did, didn't
acting.
I?
Yes. So I'm in the other room and he's talking, and all of a sudden I hear a stream of him urinating into the toilet. And I'm like, no. And then you could hear him stop. And I was like, okay, he caught himself. And then he starts talking to her again on the phone and he continues urinating. And I'm like, so this is an example of this. I'm noticing, okay, the first part of me is like, this is not happening. I know this isn't I start gaslighting myself because this is not happening because I don't know what I'm going to feel if this happens. The second part of me is like, what the fuck? Who the fuck are you to pee? What white man privilege do you have to pee on the phone with a woman? And we've actually talked about you've had people like
Yeah,
use the bathroom when you've been in client like sessions like on the phone.
yeah. Hmm.
Um, and so my second reaction is like anger, like a boundary has been crossed. And then the third reaction is I'm trying to understand. Like what is going on here?
Let's
Does
get
he
curious.
think this is appropriate? Yeah, I totally am like I'm trying to understand. So this is my process. I'm trying to understand why Lara would think it was okay to pee on the phone to a female friend.
Right.
And and then the fourth reaction is this is not happening. And I cycle through these. And then finally, I think I said to you, like, are you really doing what I think you're doing? Like, I'm like, wait, and you can hear me kind of going through this. Like, I'm like, wait, what? No, Lair, stop. And then I'm on the phone, I'm on the floor, like doing yoga, and I'm like breathing. And then I'm like, what are you doing? And then I'm like breathing again. And then I just hear you start laughing. You laughing,
Because
son of
I
a
know,
bitch.
I
And he
know what it's
knows
gonna
what
do
I'm
to you.
going through.
I know what it's gonna do to you. Like the idea that you would have the audacity to do something, just be so thoughtless. And I just thought, well, I don't know what made me think of it, but I just thought this would be a great way to get
Also,
her.
I felt so protective of her. And I'm sitting here going, how do I want to handle this? How do I light you up and let Patsy know I don't tolerate this shit and let you know? But I'm also like remembering who you are. And I'm like, this
Right?
isn't like him. So I'm so
No.
confused at the moment because you would never do that. You would never. So, but remember, my biggest fear, having lived with someone who had a severe personality disorder, my biggest fear that at any moment anyone can turn into a monster. So when you do that shit, I'm like, this is the moment you've turned into a monster.
I don't mean to laugh. Probably. I mean, that one might have been on the line. I don't know. It was close.
It was so bad. It was so bad. So anyway,
So
that's my process.
you had to wrestle with your parts.
I totally wrestled with my parts. And yeah, I was figuring out how I was going to light you up. And was I going to do it while you were on the phone with Patsy or after? But
I even forgot to tell her that I did that. I mean, I wouldn't even feel comfortable necessarily telling her that I did that. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, that's kind of weird too.
Yeah.
So she'll hear it on this, or I'll tell her.
Right. That's why I'm shocked you brought it up, but it's funny. No, I could see where afterwards I was like, ooh, maybe that one was a little too close to the line.
You actually apologized. You were like, if I had known you were going through that, I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, it wasn't certainly was not my intention, because I guess I thought the overriding understanding would be that, of course I would never do anything like that's ridiculous. But at further analysis, I just did it in the moment, and I think I was in a really silly part of self. I think I had been messing around with you all day. And
you are, but you forget that that underlying thing of my life is like,
no, that's true. That's true. No, and that's true. And that's part of loving you. And it's part of recognizing that there is this aspect in you that, look, does not feel safe in the world. So while that was funny, it really was not that funny in the final analysis, primarily because there is this aspect of you that does kind of question in that moment. And when you outlined that, I was like, oh shit, that made me feel terrible that I did that to you.
Well, I do want to say, so I wanted to say it's fucking funny. It's so funny because after I've known you for like 23 years, okay, it's just ridiculous for me to even go there. I've really come to the place where I feel safe enough in the world. And so for me to even go there, to me is like, okay, Ash, get it together.
Well, then you're going to
He's not going to do anything like that. That's for another time. It's for another time. Oh my God, no. I don't know if we were helpful today. I don't know if we were helpful. We laughed.
Let's recap. Let's recap what we talked about.
Because man, I was rough at the beginning. So I am so sorry to Brandon and anyone listening. I was rough at the beginning. Kids were distracting. But let's recap. Yes.
Okay, so we talked about the question, should my relationship be this hard? And when people say that, they're talking about those top 10 things that people know as difficult in relationships, like communication, sex, money, jealousy, blah, blah, all those things. And my response to that is a pat answer of, yes, it should be hard, but not for any of those reasons. That relationships should be hard because relationships ask for the best of us. That asks for the pieces that we covered today are that relationship asks us to be more mindful and aware of ourselves when we want to do anything but that, when we want to be mindless. When the brain pulls for us to be mindless, right? Well, autopilot is a natural state that we have to fight in order to be more mindful. And that's what's hard about relationships. Not only that, our parts come up in our relationships. You are the most dangerous person in the world by and large, right? Because you have my heart, because I love you so deeply. And so very quickly in that vulnerability, parts will come up, right? And so on the surface of this, we have all those other things that we're talking about. Below the surface are these two pieces. And the other pieces that I think we should come to in the next session, the next podcast, we should cover essentially the last three. So relationships should be hard because it asks us to be more mindful, and it asks for the best parts of us. More to come later.
Yeah. Yeah. More to come later. Thank you so much.
You got it. And I don't think you weren't that rough. I don't think you were rough at all. But anyway,
I don't
that's
know.
it for the Practice of Love podcast. Why are you laughing?
Just because, yeah, it brings me so much joy I see you all the time, but I love talking to you and you make me laugh.
I know, right?
And I appreciate
So
it.
fun.
So great.
Yeah,
You make me laugh
yeah.
at myself too. So thank you.
Yeah, do I need to sign off?
Yes, let's sign off.
Thanks for joining us on the Practice of Love podcast. I'm your host, Lair Torrent, with my brilliant and amazing co-host, Ashely Torrent. You can find Ashely and all the things that she does wonderful on her website at ashelytorrent.com and at what's your Instagram handle?
Ashely Torrent 29.
Ashely Torrent 29. You can also check me out at lairtorrent.com and Lair Torrent Holistic Therapist on Instagram. You can also purchase the book that I say we co-wrote, by the way, The Practice of Love, wherever finer books are sold. It's also available on audiobook. That's it for now. Thanks for joining us, and we will speak to you next time.
Yes. Bye.